What is up, guys, and welcome to another episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining my two great co-hosts, Fede Perez and Ralph Hannah. And guys, happy Valentine's Day. We are recording on the 14th of February. We wanted to send all our love to everyone that loves the beautiful game, because I think that's ultimately what we like doing here on Guarani Vision, is always spreading love about, our Paraguayan football, of everything that's going on here, and of course, what football is about. And obviously, we have a lot to talk about and show some love to a lot of people as well, because obviously we're talking on the week of what we saw, some historic performances for Paraguayan teams in the Copa Libertadores. We'll also talk about, some loves that maybe get some love-hate relationship, you would say, from a player transferring to a different team. And yeah, we obviously got to show some love to the U20 teams, the U20 girls, to see how they've been doing in this championship. But I'll go to Paraguay first, to Fede, because I think I think the party is, in Asuncion. I think there has always been that sort of celebration across the entire country. But over there in Pedro Juan Caballero, I'm sure they are showing lots of love to Los de Mayo over there after their historic week.
Hello, guys. I don't know what happened there. Sorry. Hi to everyone that's listening to Guarani Vision. Great to be back for another episode. And definitely Dos de Mayo was one of the things to talk about this week, guys. All over the country, right? Not just in Pedro Juan Caballero. Everybody was talking about what they did, and it was amazing to see the reactions from everyone. While love is in the air, no doubt about it, this weekend also with St. Valentine's, with football always on our minds. We got big games coming up again. We got Olimpia starting to take over in the Apertura after their clash against Nacional, and we're gonna get more and more teams coming into the Libertadores, right? We got Guarani also having their opportunity this week of playing their first game against Juventud, who is the Uruguayan team that was able to go through their round of games. So we got a bunch of stuff to talk about. We got the Super Clásico right after this week, and so definitely it's gonna be so much to talk about on this episode. Again, Roberto, just like always, great to be back for another one.
No, absolutely. I think it's really good to see as well, so many things going on. And I'll go to Ralph as well on this one, because obviously, we're right there in the midpoint of the month. We're about to head into March, and that means the friendlies. Paraguay have officially confirmed their friendlies against Greece and Morocco next month. And I think it's always a case of just, in the span of, the week. I mean, we saw obviously a lot of debate, and I think that is really the big debate. Like, oh, who's gonna get called up? And like, we've been seeing players score goals. I just saw Gabriel Avalos score yesterday for Independiente, Robert Morales scoring again. So it's just, we're gonna just have the same good. I don't want to say old, actually. I want to say good, because it is a good debate. Let's be real. Like, yeah, same old debate maybe for those that are like, oh, why we got to talk about this? But no, I think it's a good debate to really just continue to talk about this, especially as players continue to go on. Obviously we have the news from Brazil that looks like Mauricio from Palmeiras is going to get called up as well. The new Paraguayan, naturalized Paraguayan, but Brazilian born, thanks to his Paraguayan father. So it just opens more and more debate of like what's been going on, and like, yeah, just a lot of players seems to be exposed in that sense of like, okay, who's really going to impress to make that call up list next month.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we've got the two friendlies confirmed now, which everybody kind of knew it was Greece and Morocco, but it's now finally confirmed. And we were just talking off air that we're about 2 weeks from the transfer window closing in Paraguay. And you're talking about the naturalized players as well. I mean, everything is boiling up now, so we should start to see some clarity in a few weeks when we have the transfer window closed. We know where everybody's playing or will be playing up until the World Cup. And then also we'll start to see that those squads for those friendlies at the end of March. So I mean, it's just we're in this moment of speculation, as we have been for a while, as we're trying to find out what's happening, but we're getting close to when things are going to start to get clear, and Alfaro will pick his team, and we're going to start to see who exactly is there. And looking forward to it, because there's going to be some great games coming up between now and then, between now and then being the friendlies, right, where players can really show what they're made of. And we've already seen this week with Dos de Mayo some incredible performances as well.
Yeah, no, totally. And I think it really is opening the debate. I mean, obviously the goalkeeping debate, Fede, has always been sort of like who's it going to be? Is it going to be Gatito? Is it going to be Orlando Gil? Is it going to be someone else? But I mean, and we'll go jump into it right now with Dos de Mayo. I mean, obviously them getting the historic qualification, win over there in Lima against Alianza Lima. Obviously, everyone's talking about them qualifying, but I think we have to firstly go to really the man of the match and the man that really put them in that spot to not get eliminated. And that's Angel Martinez. Angel Martinez, obviously being the goalkeeper, stopping a penalty, obviously being very much the stop shopper in that one. And, I mean, obviously it probably is more tongue in cheek than an actual reality, but after his performance and after that, we saw in social media about people saying, hey, why don't we give him a chance to get called up to the national team? Maybe he deserves a spot, but no, it's incredible to see what they did over there in Lima and to obviously beat a team that obviously is always consistent when it comes to Copa Libertadores qualifications and is one of the better teams in Peru. I think for those de Mayo to do this on their first ever run in a international competition is really great to see.
It is amazing to see, and just the way it played out and against the team that they played also. But, just going back to the point of, if you're a goalkeeper in first division here in Paraguay, and after what happened, especially to Aldo Perez, which was a goalkeeper that was in the consideration, had been called up, the Guarani goalkeeper, after his injury that happened in the first game of the year, or I believe, the other goalkeepers must feel, okay, it could be my time. It could be my opportunity. A window has opened up. Even for goalkeepers that have been before to the national team, I would say Santiago Rojas from Nacional, Kili Rojas, right? I mean, he must even be thinking, hey, if I do well these couple of months, I might get another call up, because Alfaro's looking. He's going to every practice, talking to every player and motivating the guys even. So if you're Angel Martinez, which is the name that we're going to talk about right now, you must be feeling pretty good about yourself, because around you, everybody's saying the same thing. Even your teammates are telling you now, hey, he's Paraguayan. Don't forget about him, Alfaro. Why don't you give it an opportunity? We saw that happen after this game against Alianza, because he was so important in both games. I mean, stopping so many balls, and I still kind of get him confused with the name. I'm still having problems because we have a lot of Martinez that play here in Paraguay. I believe we also have another Angel Martinez with the same name, even playing in first division. I know Angel Pito Martinez, for instance. He has a long career in first and second division also. And Miguel Martinez, goalkeeper of Ameliano. I'm just going from the top of my head. There's a whole bunch of Martinez, and he's making a name for himself now. It's great to see that. Love to see these stories also, right? From young goalkeepers. He started out in Olympia, had to wait for his moment, wasn't going to get an opportunity there, and said, I want to get out of here. And which team wants me? Dos de Mayo, Pedro Juan Caballero. I got to make a trip all the way to the other side of the country. And he did that. And he waited for his opportunity because he had an experienced goalkeeper in front of him. And ever since last year, I believe it was around September, October, he kind of took over with Marcelo Palau, where he got his first opportunity. And now he's making a difference, guys. I mean, he stopped several penalties already. He has his own style. He has his personality, because you see him talking to the defenders all the time. And this is a goalkeeper that wants to stand out right now. Born in San Juan Nepomuceno, a little over 2 hours just away from the capital of Asunción. His story is being told once after the other, because he was definitely one of the heroes, I would say, even in this series, guys. I mean, if I have to pick just one player out, I'm going with Angel Martinez. He definitely was one of the stars of this Dos de Mayo against Alianza.
Yeah, I mean, it was a story in a way of two penalties that tie, right? Because it's the one that he saves, and interestingly, the Paulo Guerrero didn't want to take, which I know that generated a lot of controversy in Peru, right? Why wasn't Guerrero gonna take the penalty? And in the end, I mean, it's Castillo that steps up and Martinez makes a save. And then later on, when the tie it's even, because it's 1-0 to Alianza Lima, but then Dos de Mayo win a penalty. And Brian Ayala, who's suffered a lot with injury, has come back. He's a very good free kick taker as well, and corners. He's often on corners. Apparently, he said, I want this penalty, and he stepped up, took it, and scored. And that's what ended up putting them through 2-1 an aggregate. But it's been an incredible story, because even days before the game, they had to travel from Pedro Juan Caballero. There's only like very local, air, like very small airplanes. So the best way for them to do was just get a bus down to Asuncion, which usually takes like 5, 6 hours. And the bus broke down. So you have Diego Acosta who scored the goal in the first leg with the selfie of everybody's like with their shirts off because it's so hot. They're in the middle of, the red earth of Paraguay. And there they are, like waiting for a new bus because their bus broke down. They make it, obviously, they get there. And then he ends up taking a selfie in the dressing room with the same kind of idea of all the players with the bus that broke down and then with the qualification to the next round. So what a story for Dos de Mayo, and particularly Angel Martinez. So we gotta come up with like Argentina have Dibu Martinez. We gotta come up with like a little nickname for Angel because to Fede's point, when I read Angel Martinez, I always think of the central defender that had such a long career. So we'll find something for him. And now the next round, Sporting Cristal. So they're going to end up back in Lima against Alianza's historic rivals, which is great. I mean, I think it's great for them in a way that they repeat the journey because they have the confidence now that they can go to Peru and win. So let's see what happens. The next week, the first leg is at home again. So they have to do the work at home like they have been. But then, hey, who knows? It could happen and they could be in another round of qualifying and be on the very verge of the group stages.
Which would be
his teammates call him Pulpo, Roberto. Just to clarify, he does already have a nickname, I believe. If we were to call him in English, it's going to be the octopus. But in the locker room, they call him that. They call him El Pulpo.
Well, that's good because at least we can differentiate him from Pulpito with Alexis Duarte. So, we have the big octopus and the small one. So, no, I like that. And, I think as well, Fede, I think it's also huge from a historic point of view, obviously, and also a financial point of view. They're getting a lot of money in this one. Like you said, those long trips from Pedro Juan, the fact that they're going to have to do this again when they have to head to Peru to take on Sporting Cristal, maybe that sort of money that they're going to get is going to help them in a way. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how far they can go. We obviously have to talk about the other Paraguayan team in the competition. They got to take on Guarani, taking Juventud, who actually also shockingly defeated Universidad Católica of Ecuador. They beat them in a really crazy game over there in Quito. I think it was like 7 goals overall in the whole 90 minutes, and then it went to penalties. So yeah, no, I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But I guess we'll switch gears to Guarani, and how do you feel about how they're going to do? Obviously, their start to the league has, they put them in there competitively. Obviously, losing just one game, and obviously they're trying to be better in what they've done last season. I saw them yesterday. They beat Sportivo San Lorenzo convincingly. So I'll go to Ralph on this one. I mean, how do you feel about Guarani's chances against Juventud? I think they would feel very confident just because of the morale, you would say, of what's been going on over there in the league, at least.
Right. I mean, we talked about in the preview, we were worried about they lost Willy Mendieta and Fernandez was injured. And we were saying, where are they missing some things? And we saw maybe a slow start to the league. But the last 3 games they've scored 3 goals, 4 goals, 3 goals. One of the 3 was a draw. It's a 3-3 draw with Libertad. I mean, now they're scoring all these goals. You're like, I don't think we're too worried about Mendieta and Fernandez not being fully fit or right back yet. The game against San Lorenzo was interesting though because really they were close to almost losing that game against San Lorenzo because it was 1-1 and then San Lorenzo hit the bar in like 75th minute or something, and it was only right at the death that the Guarani scored the 2 goals to put them ahead and win the game. But one of the goal scorers is the guy who's on form at the moment is Derlis Rodriguez. So he's got 3 goals in 3 games. I think he has an assist in there as well. And if you remember, he was at Tacuary. He went to Cerro. He was used by Cerro a lot as a sub, and he was a good sub. But as we talked before on the show, they have such a stacked attack at the moment. There wasn't really a place for him to play regularly, and he ended up going to Guarani, where I thought he was very good in patches, but he's always struggled to kind of show that consistency. So he scored 3 goals in 3 games, but that comes after like a huge drought of no goals. And you go back to like, I think August when he scored 3 goals in 3 games. So he seems to like hit these moments of sparks where he's playing well. But I think Delis Rodriguez has been really interesting. And Cesar Minio is a player that he debuted when he was like 15. So he seems like he's been around forever. He's still only, I think, 19 now. He was in the U20s last year. And he scored the first goal. And he is a very good, very technical, very exciting player. Now that he's a bit older, he has a bit more to him physically. And so that's also a very interesting player. And I think with just naming those two, I feel they would have the quality to beat Juventud. But first leg is away in Montevideo, so you never know. It's not an easy place to go at any time. And also Guarani do have a bit of a history in qualifying games. I remember Rorro Lopez missing against Táchira. They went out to like Táchira. So they historically as a club, they've also struggled in these phases. But on paper, they should be able to do it.
Yeah, and Juventud showed up a fight really to turn it around in their series. So they showed that, they got their grit, they got their personality. They can come back if they need to in the second game. And it was kind of that week also in Libertadores, real tight matches. A lot of them ended up in penalties. I kind of expect this one also to end up that way. I don't think any of these two teams are going to blow each other away. Guarani has been looking better, just like Roberto mentioned, these last couple of games. Serbia has kind of stood around and has settled in, I would say, in the goalkeeper position and coming back as one of the leaders also of this pack, of this team. I always have my doubts around the defense. There's always been changes there. Obviously, Imanol Segovia is playing alongside Sebastián Saracho. Saracho has had a couple of bad games. They've always been scored on, but they just got to clean up their stuff. Because offensively, just like Ralph said, they have a lot of really good talent. They have a lot of really good players, especially if you're going to put in Fair, that he came back in this last game, getting his opportunity, getting his first minutes in these last two matches. So he's going to be very important, to lead also the team offensively alongside other players. I love Derlis Rodriguez. He's been scoring, which is something that we haven't seen much from him in his career. So he's definitely taking the responsibility of wearing the number 10 jersey, which is an important jersey also in the locker room, and he's becoming that leader offensively with Diego Fernandez. I think the team is starting to come together. He's starting to find the right pieces. I'm talking about the coach. He had a lot of doubts at the beginning of the season, Victor Bernay, but I believe in this team. This was one of my favorite teams to even fight for the Apertura. So now that they're going to hit the Libertadores, I'm definitely going to be rooting for them. And, Guarani has done good Libertadores runs before. So I expect them to get at least to the group stage, guys. I think they have enough. I look at their squad, I look at the experience, and I believe they can do it against Juventud.
So you're saying that both these teams have the good chance to qualify to the next round, Ralph?
Well, Guarani have a better chance than Dos de Mayo. I think Dos de Mayo, everything's going to hang on that first leg. Let's see what they can do. If the way they got the victory against Alianza Lima just set them up so well. All the pressure was on Alianza for the return leg. So it's the same here. If they can get that, just squeeze that victory next week against Cristal, then all the pressure goes back on Cristal. But I don't know if I put them favorites. Not like I would. Guarani, I would expect to go through. Dos de Mayo, I would hope that they can continue the run.
Good. How do you feel?
No, Dos de Mayo is the underdog. No. Even that mentality has worked for them, right? Feeling that way also, and they've even used, the vocabulary that we heard after the game. It was even talking about Paraguay and defending the Paraguayan football. They're talking about that in the locker room. So they're motivating themselves. Hopefully they have enough in the tank, right? Just like Ralph said, I mean, there was a problem with the bus, and I'm talking about the tank, the players, and hopefully physically they can, with all these traveling and going back and forth and with these games that are also high on emotions, they can run past another Peruvian team. And that would be huge if they just leave out two big teams from Peru. Everybody in Peru is going to know Dos de Mayo, even the ones that are trying to talk now about Dos de Mayo because they're going to go up against their team. I mean, Dos de Mayo, I believe, they got the impulse. They got Paraguay and some Brazilians also rooting for them. So I think they could be one of the surprises. We've seen surprises lately in the Libertadores, and I think Dos de Mayo could be one of them.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens, and I'm curious to see how they both do in both those games and both those ties. As we switch gears now to the National League and seeing what's going on. Olimpia, obviously top of the league as we speak, one of the only two teams to not lose a single game yet. Obviously, Cerro Porteño is the other one. They obviously have a Super Classico coming up next week. Actually, then we'll talk about that very soon. But I mean, I guess this is something that I need to talk about firsthand, and it's good that we're actually talking this on the day of the game. We gotta talk about the promoted teams because obviously it appears as if though all the talk has been of Dos de Mayo and really being that team that everyone's talking about. We gotta talk about the other teams that really also came up with Rubio New and Sportivo Luqueño, and obviously we talk about Luqueño now hiring Julio Cesar Cáceres as the new manager. We gotta talk about Rubio New as well, Fede. Them losing the Derby Trinidense to Derby de Trinidad against their rivals Trinidense. That does not good well for Gustavo Mourinho's side, and just it feels chaotic over there in Santissima Trinidad, at least on one part of the neighborhood.
Yeah, so far not so good for either of these teams, right? We talked about San Lorenzo on the last episode. We talked about the manager change with Julio Cáceres coming in, and I kind of expect the same thing to eventually happen in Rubio Ñu if Gustavo Mourinho can get it together, right? I mean, obviously against the big team, you kind of expect them not to get the results, but some of them have already gotten away from them at home, especially this Clásico that you talked about last week, and that was a feisty one. That was a very neighborhood kind of battle. We had everybody really from the neighborhood in that match because they're two teams that are really close to each other. There's that rivalry, and I loved it, guys. That was a real derby. I would say that was the first big derby of the year in Paraguay, and it ended up going for Trinidad. So that they have their style. They have a coach that's been there forever. They know what they need to do in every game. They have a lot of experienced players that come into the game and make the difference. But for Rubio New, right now everything's looking kind of fishy, guys. I'm not feeling it with this team. I see a lot of players that are played in Intermedia, and I see a coach that's not finding its pieces right away. So it could fall apart real fast for them. I feel like it already fell apart for San Lorenzo because they can't win yet. And for Rubio New, it could be the same way if they don't get it together right in this Apertura. I mean, for these two teams, it could be just a nightmare playing in the Clausura and leaving First Division just so quickly. I don't even know why I'm talking about this in February. I hope that one of these two teams survive and they wake up. But so far, it has looked just ugly for both of them.
Yeah, I think particularly for Rubio New that started okay with the two draws, and then they got beaten badly by Guarani, and you thought just get that over and do something in the Clásico. And the Clásico, like Fede, it kind of played out as you expected with these two teams. It was a lot of fouls, very feisty, and then it's the 92nd minute is Trinidense scored the winner, which they went crazy with their fans. It's just for people to understand, this is a real local derby. It's Trinidad is one of the oldest kind of suburbs of Asuncion, that whole area. And between Rubio News ground and Trinidense's ground, I think is less than a mile, or is definitely like a mile and a half or something.
5-6 blocks, Ralph.
Right, it's walkable, right? So it's a real neighborhood derby, and of course, people that live in there, it's they're either one or the other teams because they'll have grown up one of the other. They probably did Escuela de Fútbol at one of the two teams because it was right there. So, I mean, it's one of those real local derbies that you don't often get in football anymore, because unless you have that real history of building stadiums inside cities and rather than on the outside or the outskirts, then it's kind of hard to reproduce that. So that was very cool to see as a spectacle, but for Rubio New, it just went the wrong way. And now they've got Olimpia. I was just looking. I mean, they beat Olimpia in 2015, so that's the last time. I mean, they haven't played for a while because they've been out of Primera, but they really beat Olimpia anyway. And so trying to get the result today, as at the time of recording, is going to be very difficult against an Olimpia team that's done very well, right? I mean, I think we all had doubts about them, how they would incorporate everybody. And at the moment, Olimpia is not looking great defensively, but they're winning every game. They're scoring enough goals. Well, they've drawn one, of course, but they're scoring enough goals to get it over the line to produce wins. And so that's why they're sitting top and Rubio New sitting winless. And so you would assume things go to form and Olympia win today, and that means they'll be top going into the Clásico against Cerro.
And Cetera obviously need to get their win to sort of build that sort of momentum taking on Nacional. I mean, how do you feel about this? I mean, I guess we'll put you on the spot for both of you, and I'll even get a prediction as well. I think Cetera wins this one. I think they'll finally find the momentum to actually, I mean, not find, but continue their momentum and beat Nacional in this one. What do you guys think about that one? Because I feel like that is really the match to watch this weekend. I'll go to you, Feather.
I think it could end up as a drive. And I think Nacional has to, stand up after what happened with them against Olympia. I think this is their opportunity. It was kind of weird for me to see two center forwards against Olympia, which is something that they weren't using before. So it was kind of weird from the manager, the way that he handled the game against Olympia. Hopefully he reads it correctly and goes with the right strategy against the Cerro Porteño. Is going to have a lot of fans in the stands. The big team started out well. They're fighting for the title. So this puts a lot of people in the stands. And so, when you're the away team, you're going to feel the pressure, but it could be just motivation for a team like Nacional. If they want to be up to it, they got to win these kind of games. And one of them already got away from them, which was against Olympia at home. They got to win one back. So it could be that opportunity for them. For Cerro, it's just about getting the pieces back together, right? Getting Iturbe back and getting Cecilio back in form. Cecilio Dominguez, who played his first game of the year against Dos de Mayo and Pedro Juan Caballero. They're coming off a 0-0 draw against that team. They didn't play that well, but you're starting to see players convincing the coach, right? You're starting to see some sort of shift with the players that he's even starting to use. So I think it's up to Jorge Baba's decisions to put the right team together and to make Begetti start scoring a whole bunch of goals, which is what the fans want to see. So far, just one goal from him, and it was a penalty, guys. We want to see much more. We expect to see many, many more goals from him, right?
Absolutely, Ralph.
Yeah, I think with Vegetti, we talked about at the beginning he wasn't really up to it physically, or you didn't feel like he was fully there. But the last game I saw him, I started to think, okay, now he's maybe getting into the groove, showing what he can do. But to Fede's point, I mean, they've signed him to score goals, so that's where we need to start seeing it is the difference in the goals. It's going to be a really interesting game with Nacional because Felipe Jimenez did a great job with Dos de Mayo against Cerro. I don't know if you guys remember in La Hoya, he actually won 3-0 with Dos de Mayo. That was when Manolo was coach. It's the first time that I think that Bava and Jimenez find each other facing off from what I can remember, because I don't think they crossed over before. But this is a guy just like Fede said, he went with something a bit different against Olympia, playing the two strikers, and it nearly came off. I mean, they nearly got the tie. And you could see, I mean, tactically, he's always got something up his sleeve. So I think it'll be a very interesting game. And the pressure is always on Cerro in these games, right? I mean, Nacional had a great start to the season, but no one was really expecting them to fight for a title, whereas Cerro always have to. So going into this game, I don't think Nacional feel the loss against Olympia as much as say Cerro feel the draw against the Dos de Mayo that they should have beaten, really. I mean, they've also always struggled, by the way, in Pedro Juan. Their record isn't great there, so maybe it wasn't such a disaster. But you expected them to win, given that Dos de Mayo didn't have the full team. So pressures on Cerro. I think either they just win or it's a tie. I can't see Cerro winning easily, and I don't think Nacional will actually get the win. So somewhere around there. I'm not giving a full prediction, but something around there.
No, it's
What
all
about
good.
you, Roberto?
I'm just going for the draw. I'm going for the win. Actually, I'm going for Cerro Porteño. I think they need to build in that momentum again, like I said, to really show on. I think Vegetti needs to also be able to show off. So I'm putting in for the win for this season. That's my personal opinion about it, and I'm going to stick with it. And then what else is I'm going to stick with is also how Cerro Porteño fans might be feeling. We'll talk about one transfer in a bit that is official, another one that could happen. But I think one thing that Cerro fans are a bit pissed off about, so I think that's why they need to get this win to sort of forget it, is the move for Oscar Romero going to Huracan. Now, one would think, okay, yeah, this is normal. It's fine. Leaving. He left the Internacional as a free agent. Obviously, this is him trying to, work his way back into, the national team to relevance, similar to what Angel Romero is doing right now when he's at Boca. But the question is that, he was, and I'll go to Fede first on this one, that he was flirting with Cerro Porteño for quite some time. I mean, there was, rumors of him trying to get a move. We even saw them practice at the Paraguayan Huracan to sort of get him back into shape. But, and, ultimately, I'm sure there was sort of that interest and maybe even an offer given to Oscar, but ultimately he decided to go to Huracan. And I think Cerro fans are kind of pissed off about that because it's almost as if they just got played by them, by Oscar Romero. And, certainly the resources that maybe Cerro Porteño can provide, and obviously the competition compared to Huracan, which, they are a good team and they, obviously are playing in Argentina, but what else can they provide in that sort of sense? It feels weird if you are a Cerro fan, but I don't know. It's a decent move for him to get back, but I don't know if it's going to be enough for him to be back on the national team. Maybe comparable to if he was at Cerro Porteño. I don't know. It feels weird, but I want to hear what you thought.
You sound kind of hurt, Roberto, and I feel you. I feel Cerro fans because I've heard it all around this week, right? Ever since it was confirmed, and it was one of the names that needed a club. His brother already had the opportunity to sign for Boca Juniors. We talked about that a couple weeks ago. Good for Angel, right? Playing a big team in Argentina. But for Oscar, it always looked like it was going to take longer. There weren't that many clubs looking for him because he didn't really have a good 2025. A lot of injuries also along the way. He hasn't been playing for the national team either lately. Angel has been called up a couple of games. He even played a couple of minutes for the national team in the qualifiers, but not Oscar. So we're clearly seeing a difference between one brother and the other, in my way of seeing it lately, right? In football terms, in the field playing. So I thought Oscar really had an opportunity to come back to Cerro Porteño. I thought Cerro was going to try to convince Oscar to come back to Cerro, but that apparently didn't happen. I mean, from what I heard, Cerro didn't do much for Oscar to come back to Cerro Porteño, and Oscar apparently, well, Cerro wasn't the first option now. Even, I believe, and this is something that I've heard, apparently Angel and Oscar said, we're going to wait for the World Cup, and after the World Cup, we're going to come to Cerro Porteño. Now we know that Oscar and Angel signed a year contract, so they won't come back after the World Cup. This is going to take a while. But also, I saw them not probably have the best time in Cerro Porteño Stadium. And I remember this a couple of times last year. They went to see a couple of games, and the fans already kind of went at them. The fans have been waiting for them to come back, and they're taking forever. They're taking their time. They're going from one club to the other. And now you've seen Oscar Romero go to Huracan, and I'm thinking Huracan is not Cerro Porteño. Huracan is a much smaller team than Cerro Porteño. This was his opportunity to put fans by his side, and he just made his decision to play in Argentina. Hopefully it works out for him. He needs to play. I don't think he's going to make it to the national team as of right now. I don't think he's even on the radar. But he needs to play, guys. I mean, we're about to start March, and he just signed the team. It took him a while, too long, I would say.
He turned down the Ciclón for the Huracan, Oscar Romero. But I think I don't know how much he turned Cerro down or Cerro weren't so interested. To Fede's point, these guys, they've always done it either very well or very difficult, however you want to look at it. But they make sure they get paid, and they get paid well, and they've had a very good career. Never really going to Europe, for example. They've always been around. I think Oscar went to China, right? But I think mostly in the Middle East they've been to. But mostly they're around South America and they make good money. And so I don't think, also for two things. One, Cerro with the new president coming in and everything. I don't know if they were ready to like drop this big signing with all this money, having just brought in Vegetti, which wasn't cheap. And then also, I think with the scouting and the way they've been working Cerro with the new kind of system, with the head scout, I don't know if they wanted to like just rock the boat for someone just for what would be more an emotional signing. So I think there was a bit of hesitancy on the Cerro side, and then from the Romero side, I think it was, yeah, if we're gonna do this. But there might be we want to do it together. So that was out off the table. But also, I think if we're going to do this, it has to really be worth my while. And Cerro weren't able to offer that. The big thing for him now is just to get some minutes, try and get some game time, because he really hasn't played as much recently as we're talking about, and with the injuries and now with this long layoff until signing. So it's really like get some minutes and get some relevance again and get into the conversation, because I don't think, like we were just saying, I don't think Oscar's really been in the conversation, um, because think about where he plays and think about the players we have. I mean, he's competing with people in Europe at the moment in the top five leagues in Europe. I mean, it's really hard for him to get into that conversation. I mean, maybe you could question Ramon Sosa at Palmeiras, and then could Oscar Romero come in? But even, I mean, Ramon Sosa's Palmeiras in Brazilian football at the moment is at another level, I think, to what we're seeing. So I think for him is just to get some minutes, and hopefully we'll have that kind of, they'll reunite with Cerro at some point, but it's not going to be now.
No, it will not be. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see if he can get in. And there's another player that could indeed make a move, Fede. Also on sort of the national team radar, but not really getting anything sort of relevant, and that's Ruben Lezcano. Obviously remember Ruben Lezcano making the move from Libertad to Fluminense. It hasn't worked out there, and the latest reports as we talk are him expecting a move back to Paraguay. Now, again, this is also something that had been in the works as well. Cerro Porteño had wanted him at one point. Now it looks like it could be Olimpia, even could be back to Libertad. I I don't know if it's gonna help him just because of also the other competition that's ahead of him and also what they're doing as well. But it's better than riding the bench of Luminense, I guess.
Yeah, these guys kind of look desperate, right, for minutes, and they start looking in the market for any team, I would say, that wants to give them an opportunity. But some of these teams are already assembled. Some of these teams already have their starting 11, and it's not going to be easy for these guys just to come in and be the difference maker where you're coming off a team where you're not playing, and that's the reality for a player like Ruben Lezcano. It's very different for other guys. Some are ending their World Cup expectations or dreams because of injuries. We had a couple this week also. Unfortunate, I would say. Roberto Rojas, an ex national team player. He's done for half of the year. Hugo Fernandez, maybe he wasn't on the radar, but that's another player that's down for the year or half of the year, at least a couple of months. So, we're starting to have these bad news. We got to be on top of everything in that sense. And if you get a player injured, you might need a Ruben Lezcano. You might need a player that has already been in the system, that has already been in the national team, that has already practiced with everybody. He could be one of those names that Alfaro, even though if he's not playing that much, I already had him. I know what he can give me. Maybe in 1 or 2 games, he can be that difference maker. But right now, he just needs to play. And he needs to make up his mind. I mean, he played in Libertad before leaving the country, so Libertad is always going to be an option for him coming back to Paraguay. But if Olimpia and Cerro Porteño, the big teams, want him and they're going to fight for him, he might just wait a while and see which team offers the best for him this year, where he can actually play more. I mean, in Olimpia, they're talking about Rodney Redes leaving the team. That might open up a spot. In Cerro, it looks a bit tighter, even though they need more Paraguayans, right? They have a lot of foreigner players in the local league. They can't use them all at once, so they might need a Paraguayan to kind of solve that situation. And Ruben Lezcano could be that solution. So there's all these things going around, and the managers. In the case of Cerro Porteño, you got new board members coming in, and they're now talking to Jorge Baba to see what he actually needs. But there's a whole financial issue also. Cerro was fined, and they need to put the money down before they can hire anybody. Alan Benitez is another name that was going around there, and he's a right back that already played for the national team. Also, you got a whole bunch of players, guys, that are looking for their minutes, looking for their chance, because they're seeing that the World Cup is right there, real close by.
Yeah, for Ruben Lezcano was, I mean, he was dominating the league just before he left. He was playing so well. He was very young, and Fluminense. It seemed to me like it was going to be a stepping stone to hopefully go on to Europe. It obviously didn't work out because I think maybe possibly with the World Club Cup and all the money that Fluminense received, and then suddenly they don't need to really try and bring in a foreign youngster from Paraguay when they had the money to just get other players in that were kind of ready made. So he hasn't got the minutes, he hasn't got the exposure he wanted. I mean, you would hope, or I would hope, that he finds somewhere outside of Paraguay, because if he does go back to Paraguay, whether it's Olimpia or whether it's Cerro, he can do very well and play very well, but it won't give us anything new because we know that because we saw that at Libertad. I mean, he was towards the end, he was like goal or assist in pretty much every game in the run-in, right? Just before he got transferred. So we know what he can do at that level. And that's why I'm sure both Olimpia and Cerro are interested if it becomes available. But for him, you'd hope that maybe he can find those minutes dropping down. Maybe it's even dropping down to the second division in Brazil, or maybe it's just looking for Argentina or somewhere where he can get those minutes. But you're right, he needs some game time because he's been out of the picture a long time. And what you don't want to do is be out too long and then you get injured because you haven't been playing games. So you want him to get some minutes somewhere. But if he goes to either side, I mean, he's a really good player, fits into the kind of attacking midfielder that doesn't really he can play wide, but he's not going to stay wide. He's going to come in, he's going to build things up with maybe your one striker in a 4-3-3. He would be a really good player for either side if he was to go to Cerro or Olympia.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see if that sort of move helps him in the long run. And, similar to Oscar, maybe they do a surprise and they do well that, hey, it gets Gustavo Alfaro's attention. But yeah, it's going to be really tough and they have to get it from the get-go immediately. So we'll have to wait and see. We'll close out on one last thing before we head out. Obviously, there's been a lot of competitions going on as well from the women's side. And, we got to talk about the U20 championship currently happening in Paraguay at the minute, the Sudamericano Sub-20 Femenino. We're into the next round right now with Paraguay making it at the host in third place. They got out of the group with Colombia, Venezuela, and they'll be taking on Argentina, Brazil, and Ecuador as well. And, obviously, they were just about finishing it there. They tied Colombia in the final day after losing to Venezuela 2-0. Now they got to take on Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Argentina, and Ecuador, where the top 4 of the top 6 go to the U20 World Cup in Poland. Ralph, I mean, it's all going to be dependent on what happens to Claudia Martinez to see if she can help lead this team back and do well in this competition to qualify for the U20 World Cup.
Yeah, I mean, because to be honest, apart from the opening win, it hasn't been pretty, right? I don't think they've scored since then. So the 0-0 draw against Colombia was like necessary to qualify, and they managed to get that point. But we're not talking about amazing performances yet. I mean, Claudia in the first game. What they have to be careful about against Brazil and Argentina are teams that will be able to defend her much better. Is you have to have a game plan other than just like go over the top to Claudia Martinez, which can work for sure because of her quality. But I think they also want to build it up and start to look at some other strategies when that's not always working, because we saw it particularly against Venezuela. I mean, they tried, couldn't break them down, and Venezuela hit them with 2 goals towards the end of the game to go out and win. So it's going to be a big challenge, I think, for Paraguay now with the Argentina Brazil in the group, and probably need to get points against one of those and do something this time against Venezuela in the revenge game, I guess. So it's a big challenge, but they got home advantage, right? So hopefully home advantage can see them through. I think it's different for the traveling teams where you don't get to see your family regularly. You're locked away for so long. I mean, not literally locked away, but you're in the concentración for so long. And for a lot of players at that age, they haven't done this and been away from home for such a long time. So Paraguay have that home advantage. Maybe in the final stretch can sometimes help you. And let's see if they can do it. Maybe slip in that 4th spot is what I'd be hoping for.
Yeah, I'm aiming for the same thing now, right? After seeing what they did against Venezuela and Colombia, the first game went down just way too smooth to be real, and we saw that reality check against the hard teams and the strong teams in the group stage. And now definitely going up against Argentina, Brazil, the team that usually takes the championship, it's gonna be even harder. So they're gonna have to take it up a level. We're gonna need other players to step up. Alison Barreiro, I haven't seen much of her yet, and she's that other striker that could make that difference. Pamela Villalba, we want to see much more from her also. one of the leaders in that midfield. But Tamara Villalba has been kind of standing out. The goalkeeper, she's been doing really well. She's one of the stronger pieces, I would even say, of this team, of this squad. But they're really young girls. They need to go through this process of making mistakes, learning from them, and obviously becoming that better team, which they need to be now when they go head to head for that opportunity to qualify for the World Cup.
Yes, absolutely. We're going to have to wait and see what happens there. And obviously everything that's going to happen in the next week here on Guarani Vision as we speak it, as we always do. So we'll close out another great episode for myself, Roberto Rojas, Fede Perez, and Ralph Hannah. Thank you so much for listening in. See you soon.